SJWs say we're the mean ones? Andy Warski versus Franchesca Ramsey. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and I was just watching Andy Warski's video today about how he had a private conversation with Franchesca Ramsey where he possibly naively tried to come to an understanding with her. But in the end, she played victim and said that he hurt her fees, and then cut off all communication with him by blocking him on Twitter after he thought that they made some progress, making it seem like it likely all was just a trick from her end. It seemed pretty weird to me, so I'll give my perspective. See, a lot of people who haven't watched a bunch of my videos assume that I used to be some sort of social justice warrior type. But that's not entirely true. I was around many people who were for many years, and I was good at not offending them, which I chose to do for a long time. But I certainly never was one exactly, even though I believed a lot of the myths that they propagated. I chose to self-censor for the most part, almost my entire time living in the San Francisco Bay Area for over 7 years. And since I was gay and had friends of all colors and genders, everybody assumed that I must be some sort of intersectional feminist ideologue, simply because I was able to speak their language. However, there were things they did that always rubbed me the wrong way, like relentlessly hating on anybody who worked in tech, simply because they had money, calling people Republicans as an insult if somebody ever disagreed with them about anything, as if being a Republican definitely made somebody a bad person, and, of course, the white male bashing, which became more and more popular this decade. Somehow this behavior was mostly considered acceptable in these circles, and often even encouraged, especially if somebody was a black female or a black gay guy. It created an environment where a black woman, or a black gay guy especially, basically could get away with absolutely any rude behavior, even completely publicly. And no matter what the circumstances of the argument, there'd always be a handful of white people to defend them. Defending a black woman or a black gay guy has become a great virtue signaling act that is sure to score somebody some ally points in social justice warrior land. And every white person loves to be an ally to somebody with quote-unquote intersecting forms of oppression. But of course, that ends up meaning that if somebody is a black woman, for example, who surrounds themselves with mostly white social justice warriors, maybe even marrying one, they get to basically live like a queen, more or less immune from criticism, because they benefit from everybody kissing their ass, usually based on white male guilt. This hypothetical black woman can be completely rude or say all sorts of terrible things, and even then, people will say that anybody who objects to it is just tone policing her and telling her how to feel about her own oppression as a black woman. But maybe even more so, if this black woman learns to sugarcoat her act a bit and not sound like a complete lunatic, she can become world famous for saying racist stuff by using contemporary politeness standards to attempt to cover for the fact that she is saying a lot of rather racist and vile things, like that white people can't experience racism, and then imitating a super stereotypical white woman and mocking this hypothetical white woman for going by the dictionary definition of the word racism. That, by itself, is an awful thing to say. For one, it's just horribly racist to say that racism towards one group doesn't count, and it drilled into the minds of Americans that white people cannot experience racism. And that is one of the things that made it so that we live in a culture that's so batshit insane that 4 black teenagers tortured a young white man with special needs yelling, "Fuck white people" on Facebook Live, and people defended the actions and said it wasn't racism. And no, I'm not making any of that up. A young autistic man was tortured on Facebook Live while the people who were torturing him, who were 4 young black people, yelled, "Fuck white people," over and over. And the next day, I talked to people who said that torturing a mentally disabled white guy for being white still didn't count as racism. But even further, Franny mocked people and acted like they were idiots for believing that people should define words with the dictionary, as if everybody is wrong about this book called The Dictionary that was told to us starting in kindergarten as the way to define words. And according to Franny, you're just a stupid white woman for believing in the stupid white people's dictionary. Now, was Franny attacking anybody personally when she did that? Technically, she wasn't. She was just attacking millions and millions of English-speaking people who think that the dictionary is the source of word definitions. And truthfully, she was just reciting the same postmodern sociological, cultural, relativist nonsense that's been floating around for decades. However, her videos are promoted by MTV and produced by MTV, and despite people hating them on YouTube, they actually do get lots of play on Facebook, and they influence young people. That all said, she's not being nice by publishing these videos which increase racial tensions so blatantly, mocking people who disagree with her with smug flippancy, and then even going so far as to pretend to be open to a dialogue with Andy Warski, who's one of her most famous critics, who admittedly does make some pretty kinda tasteless jokes on occasion, but ultimately Andy is seemingly just trying to combat racism with humor. So Franny is, in this instance, basically acting like a noble woman in some kind of fucked up medieval movie, looking at poor people out of her carriage who are drinking out of a river and saying, "Don't these peasants know that it's improper to drink water that is not from a well? Guards, make them stop." And then when her guards make them stop drinking and they ask if she has any spare water, and she says no, then the peasants throw a horse shit at her carriage as she goes away, and she gets offended and cries and acts deeply traumatized, probably reporting them to some noble man, trying to get them killed. Not that Andy Warski is the peasants in this metaphor. It's not a perfect metaphor by any means, but the point is that this entire conflict is based around this completely arbitrary standard where Franchesca Ramsey has been appointed as some sort of arbiter of truth by corporate media, but of course her message is completely racist and harmful. When criticized, she makes it all about her own feelings, as if she's basically of an entire different class than the people who are criticizing her, and that they have no right. And when she finally talks to them, it's basically only a formality where she wanted to try to make them feel sorry for being icky, mean peasants who said something mean to the noble woman. And, of course, the sad part is that due to the tyranny of fourth wave intersectional feminist social justice warrior culture, a lot of people will side with her because she's a black woman. Simply because of that. As if she's nobility, and they have to side with her. And because she probably never called Andy Warski any names publicly, unless she did, but it will still not really matter to people. She can safely go back to her castle thinking she has the moral high ground, as decided by the gods of intersectionality theory. That's all I have to say for this video. Drop me a comment, help me out on Patreon if you want more from me, and stay tuned.